Good morning. Before I begin my remarks, I want to first issue a call to our nation for peace. I know people are angry, frustrated, devastated, and they have a right to be. And I commend all of the thousands of people who have channeled their emotions into peaceful protests by coming together across this country to demand change. There is no justification for what happened in Dallas last night. As one of our nation's heroes, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, said, "Violence multiplies violence. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." The recent events of the officer-involved shooting incident resulting in the death of Philando Castile in Falcon Heights are tragic and sad in so many ways. I understand many of the emotions being expressed by our community and elected officials. I, too, am disheartened by the tragic events that unfolded Wednesday night in our community. While we don't yet have all of the facts, we do know that the loss of Philando Castile is being mourned throughout our community. And I want to especially express my sincere and heartfelt condolences to his family, his friends, and school community at J.J. Hill Montessori. We must do better in our state and in our nation to improve police-community interactions to ensure the safety of everyone in this country, but particularly the safety of African Americans who disproportionately lose their lives as a result. As you know, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has already begun its investigation and released preliminary information last night. My staff has been working closely with the BCA agents assigned to this case since yesterday morning. I've spoken to the superintendent of the BCA, Drew Evans, and he has assured me that they are making this investigation a top priority. I have asked for a prompt and thorough investigation. Both of these goals are equally important to uphold. Once they have concluded their investigation, they will present the case to our office for prosecution review. It has long been the practice of this office to present such cases to a grand jury. I believe there are benefits to doing so. However, I will decide how best to proceed at a later time after additional thought and conversations with my senior leadership staff. Regardless of whether the decision to prosecute is made by the residents of Ramsey County through a grand jury process or by this office, the law remains the same. The use of deadly force is justified only when necessary to protect the officer or another from apparent death or great bodily harm. In order to bring criminal charges against a police officer for using deadly force in the line of duty, Minnesota law requires the state to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the use of force was not justified. If the grand jury determines that charges are warranted in this case, or this office makes that decision, I assure you that we will prosecute this case to the fullest extent of the law. In times like these, I understand that it is incredibly difficult to be patient. But above all else, In order to achieve justice, we must ensure that this process is carried out with the utmost integrity. It is incumbent upon us as investigators and prosecutors to not jump to conclusions, but to view our work as a sacred trust with our community. Our system of democracy depends on our ability to diligently follow the facts and remain faithful to the pursuit of justice. The last thing I want to add before I take questions is that regardless of the outcome of this case, it is clear to me that we need to come together as a community, law enforcement included, to improve our practices and procedures so we don't experience any more of these tragedies ever again. Thank you very much.
And before, I'll just reiterate, we just have a time for a few questions, so I know you've got many. Just give us who you are, your organization, and then what your question is.
Shimon Brokovich from CNN, so thank you for doing this. There's been some criticism from the family that they haven't been able to, investigators haven't been talking to them, haven't been telling them what's going on. Do you plan to meet with the family and sort of, or have you met with the family to tell them what your plan is and sort of what's going on with the investigation?
No, I have not. I suspect that the BC investigators are scrambling right now to undertake this investigation. I'm sure there will be a moment for that when it's appropriate, but I can't speak for the BCA as to when they will do that with respect to our process. We have staff working with the BCA, but ultimately we're not the investigative agency. We are the prosecuting agency, and so our appropriate time to meet with the family is at some moment when we have a chance to actually receive the case, and that hasn't happened.
Was this person a suspect in armed robbery?
That's a part of an ongoing investigation, so I'm just not going to get into, if you ask questions about the details of the investigation, I can't go into that. And again, it really is about just upholding the integrity of the process and the investigation, and that's one of the reasons why investigators and people that are involved with it can't speak to those issues because they could actually harm and undermine the investigation if information is getting out in the context of interviewing other witnesses and the like. So it is very critical that we can address those issues right now.
Attorney Jeff Bannon, Associated Press, Minneapolis. Has the Ramsey County Attorney's Office ever prosecuted a police officer for a fatal shooting? I see there was a no bill the other day with a grand jury and an officer involved shooting.
To my knowledge, I am not aware of such a case involving where there's a police shooting incident that resulted in death, but I can certainly confirm that for you by trying to find some older records. But I don't ever recall. I've been the county attorney since 2010. But I want to also make clear that, you know, a part of that process and all of that, you know, the law in the state of Minnesota gives a lot of protections to police officers. And so, again, the law is the same whether it's a grand jury or the prosecutor making that decision.
Chad.
Ted Besser, Fire Press. You said before the apparent death or great bodily harm. It's my understanding of law, of course, I'm not in your position, that the defense of the officer would just have to prove that they perceived that they were under threat. And I wonder if you could talk about how difficult that is to prosecute.
It is a very difficult standard, but there's also an aspect in which the actions have to be reasonable. And the Supreme Court has, the United States Supreme Court has addressed some of those issues. I don't want to go too much into the interpretations of law because I don't even know what the facts are in terms of what's going to be presented to our office for us to review. But I think it's pretty commonly known, well known, that the way that the law is set up, it does, from a policy perspective, give protections to police officers in recognition for the dangerous situations that they are in.
Jennifer.
John, I'm Susan Husband with WCCO. So much of the world is seeing this video. We know a lot more than we normally do, or we think we do as viewers. How will this Facebook
Well, it certainly will be a part of the evidence, without question. And so from a standpoint of the investigation and prosecution, we have to look at everything. And so that's a part of the picture. And there'll be other things, facts that will be gathered, and that will be all a part of the investigation that will be completed and then presented to our office for prosecution review. And so the Facebook video, in many ways, it being transmitted to so many people, and then having the reaction from this community, the nation, the world, it certainly, I understand the gravity of all of that, because this has become something that people have expressed a lot of concern about, because what is depicted in the video, I mean, it makes you sad to just watch all of that unfold. But again, I think the public needs to understand we have to have the total picture, and that's what investigators are looking at.
Two more questions, let's go to the Times.
Nixon at the New York Times, sir. I'm curious, you talked about that you're going to make a decision at a later date on whether to use a grand jury in this case. Can you talk about some of the factors that you'll be weighing in deciding how to proceed on that, and a timeline for making that decision?
Well, in recognizing the gravity of the situation, having conversations with my good friend Mike Freeman, the Hennepin County Attorney, who did make a change from not using grand juries to having his office ultimately make that decision. I felt that for me, I needed to provide a little distance and time so that I could have some space to think about all of the various issues and talk with my senior leadership staff about what the best course is. And so there's not any type of way that I'm going to reach this decision. I just need a little time and thought put into it from my perspective. I think this is a very extraordinary case in terms of doesn't happen on a regular basis. And I just need that time to kind of think that through.
Last question, Rob Olson.
John Rob Olson with Fox 9. You said you asked the BCA for a prompt but thorough investigation. Did they give you any sense for how long that could be?
They have not, and I would ask that you ask them in terms of if they have a particular timeline. And I think, as I said, we want this investigation to be prompt, because I think that's very, very important. But at the same time, it needs to be thorough. And those things sometimes can compete against one another, but I believe that both can be achieved. And I know that the Department of Public Safety, BCA, will put every resource into accomplishing those two goals.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you very much.